There we are.
Good now? Hello? Oh, hello? Sorry. No, so I screwed that up. I almost said hello out there. Hello? Welcome and sorry. I mean, I'm bound to screw up once in a while here. It's I think I was shooting 100 up to then. Anyways, welcome to Maple Bitcoin Friday. Happy Friday, everybody, especially to those watching in Canada right now. It is our long weekend here. We're kicking that off. It is Maple Bitcoin, your three favorite Canadian Bitcoiners. I'm joined by Forrest Hoddle, Matthew Cratter's favorite Bitcoiner on YouTube, it seems, and Rajat the Savage. So, boys, we got a good episode today. Just like usual, we're going to kick things off with a bit of a topic here, which is the path to succeeding in Bitcoin. And then we're going to get to probably a couple other things down the road, and then we will take some questions near the end. So let's kick things off here, boys. I think there's been a lot of, over the last couple months and a year, probably, there's been a lot of focus on the number go up within Bitcoin. Everybody's focused on maybe not shortcutting Bitcoin, but, the quickest path to big gains. And I think that there's a lot going on within Bitcoin that a lot of people who are newer to the space are maybe missing out on. And so kind of what we're going to start with today is a bit of a checklist on what Bitcoiners can be doing, I think, to have a little bit more sovereignty, a little bit more, personal responsibility, because that's what Bitcoin is really all about at the end of the day. So let's kick things off with a couple things here. What are you guys' initial thoughts on this? Just the attitude within Bitcoin lately, how we've seen people getting kicked off of YouTube, some YouTube's videos being taken down. It seems like there's a bit of an attack going on. So whenever there's attacks, whenever you have your custody with somebody else, it can be problematic. So what do you guys think about this?
Yeah, before we get going on that, I just want to let everybody know, give the video a thumbs up, get more reach on the live stream, so more people will see this. It'll reach some people that aren't absolute Bitcoiners, right? That's the idea, is get new people into this space, expose them to the ideas here. And comment your questions. We will address them at some point. And to get to your point there, I mean, like, this thing that happened with, I mean, it actually kind of first happened with you, Jor, where your video got taken down and there was not really any good reason to do so. And then the next day, I think it was, right, or a couple days after, Ben's whole entire channel that he's built for 9 years got taken down. Hundreds of tutorial videos, all very educational. And it really shows the problem with centralization. This is a centralized database that we're using here on YouTube, and there's not really a good solution. I don't know if you watched his video that he posted today, but it's like, he's like, I can go to Rumble. They're like more open to this stuff. They allow a lot more things, but it's still a central point of failure. I can go to X. It doesn't really have the setup for video content, but again, you're still at the whim of Elon Musk there, right? It's centralized. And Nostr, again, is kind of a new platform, and there's a lot of self-hosting you would have to do for video content, and the viewability of it is a little bit difficult, and there's just some roadblocks there. So this goes to the point of how decentralization makes things more secure, and Bitcoin is the most secure monetary network because of how decentralized it is, how much the node runners have been prioritized throughout Bitcoin's history. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation with the content, but decentralization, and I think the more this kind of stuff happens, the more there will be a need for a better solution.
What do you think, Rajat? Yeah. Have you had any issues on YouTube so far?
Not so far. I haven't had any issues, but I'm expecting it. I mean, everybody is, right? I mean, I guess maybe there were certain things that he was saying on his account that people on YouTube didn't like. I don't know what that could be. This is just speculation. But the point here that Forrest was making there, be self-sufficient, be self-sovereign. That's what Bitcoin does. In the beginning, let's say, for example, I mean, I'm hoping that Ben from BTC Sessions was converting his wealth into Bitcoin. I'm sure he was. I'm almost 100% sure he was. But that's one of the things that I really like about Bitcoin. Regardless of what happens with the bank accounts that I have, regardless of what happens with my YouTube, regardless of what happens with my community. If Schedulista takes me off and doesn't allow me to do one-on-one meetings anymore, I can rely on the Bitcoin that I have. So I'm assuming that it won't happen, like, let's say this year, maybe next year, and probably not. But over the long term, I want to be self-sufficient. And something else that I do is I've been building on multiple platforms, which I think is key as well. If you just have everything, if you have all of your eggs in one basket, then, I mean, I wouldn't diversify with Bitcoin, but I'd diversify with businesses, because businesses can actually fail. Your Bitcoin can't. Every business can be disrupted. Somebody better could take your place. So having that Bitcoin just gives you that ability to step away from work if you need to. Having that possibility. Most people don't even have that option, right? So having that option is, I think, really important. And Bitcoin gives you that option. Nothing else really gives you that option, right? So if you had, let's say, stocks, if your government wants to attack you, they can remove access to your stocks immediately. If they want to stop you from doing things, let's say Ben said something on his channel that they didn't like, they could remove his access to his stocks, and there's nothing he can do about it. But with Bitcoin, they can't do that. They can't stop you from transacting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the main message that I want to get across today anyways, is like, you don't necessarily have to be a content creator to understand what's going on here. This is just centralization in general. And that's kind of what Forrest alluded to right off the hop. And I think that's what people really need to be paying attention to, because it's the same with the banks, right? Like if you got money in the bank, that's not really your money. It's just an IOU from the bank that maybe they'll have money if push comes to shove. Who knows if they have it or not? So that's why it's always a good idea to have some physical cash at your house, obviously some Bitcoin, maybe even some Tether on USDT. So it's kind of out of the banking system, and you're not relying on other people. And you should be thinking about that pretty much in all aspects of your life. You always want to remove the single points of failure. That could be an income stream. That could be a YouTube channel. That could be a bank account. That could even be a Bitcoin exchange, right? I've had this happen to myself before, where the price of Bitcoin went from like 20,000, I think, down to 12,000. And like very quickly, this was a while ago, but I was like, oh my God, I want to buy some sats on sale here. And I go to log into my account and it was down for maintenance. And that was the only account that I had at the time. And so I was just kind of left sitting there. I couldn't do anything about it. So you always want to make sure that you have a backup of your backup, and make sure that you're kind of decentralized in different places. But let's maybe kick the conversation off here, boys, with in terms of Bitcoin. I know there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there, probably many watching today, who have exposure to Bitcoin, but that doesn't really give you full ownership of Bitcoin. If you're holding it on an exchange, if you're holding it in a custodial wallet, something like Speed or Wallet of Satoshi, it's not really your Bitcoin. It's the same kind of thing as money in the bank. It's just an IOU. So your guys' experience with so the first one on the list here, we're going to have a bit of a checklist here that we're going to go through. But the idea here is if you can kind of do these, you're going to see the true power of Bitcoin and add sovereignty to your life. And that's kind of what Bitcoin does. So let's kick off the first one with sending a transaction on layer one. What's your guys' first experience with this? And do you guys do this often?
I do it quite often, whether it's, consolidating UTXOs. I'm building a business that runs on the Lightning rails, and Lightning Network is a layer 2, but it requires, if you're doing it yourself with your own Lightning channel, it requires you to send an on-chain transaction. So I've been building those channels up, making them robust, and that requires sending a lot of transactions. I manage part of our Maple treasury here. So, that's on-chain transactions. We consolidate within a Lightning channel, and then we swap back into on-chain. So there's all this kind of crossover. An on-chain transaction, maybe we should pull up mempool to even show what that looks like. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'll just bring that up real quick.
That was my second question, is what tools, just so we can have some actionable stuff here, what tools would you guys recommend people use if they did want to send their first Bitcoin transaction?
Well, likely you're going to have that Bitcoin in an exchange, right? You're going to have it a claim to the Bitcoin. So you think that Bitcoin is there, and it probably is, but it's in just one giant wallet, or a few different giant wallets owned by, say, Coinbase. If you have your Bitcoin on Coinbase, and when you take out, your 100,000 Satoshis, whatever it is you take out. They're going to send that from a much larger wallet, and they're going to send that transaction to wherever your receiving address is that you've put in. And then you potentially, if you've sent it to your own wallet in self-custody, then you actually own the right to that Bitcoin, the keys, the ability to move that Bitcoin at any point. Otherwise, you're subject to the whims of that exchange. There's been people saying that they get frozen out. Coinbase says, oh, you're only allowed to move this much. We're worried that maybe you're subjected to a phishing scam. We're not going to allow you to move your Bitcoin. Maintenance goes down, right? So there's all these reasons why that Bitcoin is not yours. If you're in a offshore exchange that's shady, something like FTX, that Bitcoin on that exchange could literally not exist. It could be paper Bitcoin, which has happened in the past. So that's why it's important.
Can you explain how it's possible that Bitcoin might not exist? Like what if you see it on the chain, and what if it's there on chain, but what if somebody else owns it? Like what if somebody else has the rights to it?
Yeah,
I guess that's what happens with the ETFs. Would you consider, like with Coinbase, for example? Like with Coinbase, I guess they have a massive shared UTXO, and then they say that, okay, this ETF owns this much. It's just a database inside their own system.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a database within their own system. I'm sure that with the ETFs, they probably do have very, like, they don't commingle like the custody of MSTR's Bitcoin with BlackRock's ETF Bitcoin. I'm assuming they don't. They probably have separate wallets where they just manage that to keep it easier for them as well. But an exchange will just have, again, just a couple wallets or whatever, with a lot of people's Bitcoins. So for instance, they might have one wallet that has 1,000 people's Bitcoin within it. And those 1,000 people just own a percentage of the Bitcoin in there. And it's on Coinbase to send that out to them. And so it's all internal accounting with these exchanges. And they just update their own internal spreadsheet when somebody moves that Bitcoin. And you might be able to even see, you might be able to track, if you're really good at chain analysis, or if you hire a chain analysis firm, you might be able to find those wallets that your Bitcoin is in, that is held by those exchanges. But you're still there's still an assumption there. You're still sort of trusting that that is the case, and that Coinbase owns that. It could be that, like, it's very difficult to like prove ownership of. It's difficult to prove somebody else's ownership of Bitcoin. You can prove your own ownership of Bitcoin by doing a signature or by doing a transaction from a UTXO, but it's very difficult. You have to assume a certain set of things when looking at a Bitcoin wallet that you don't control. So when you have your Bitcoin on Coinbase and you find Coinbase's wallet, you're assuming that your Bitcoin is in there. You're assuming.
And the problem with that is, like, I think of these exchanges, especially Coinbase. Bitcoin Well is different because they don't custody anybody's Bitcoin, right? But an exchange like Coinbase, I'd look at that as basically just a huge slush fund, right? Yep. Because all that they're doing is they're taking in dollars from people. Like, let's say you wanted to buy Bitcoin, you send them dollars. They keep that. They have a spreadsheet, as Forrest was saying there. It's a spreadsheet between how much cash they have, how much Bitcoin they have, and the potential for them to have more cash than Bitcoin claim to that cash. That's where the whole issue is like, yeah, people, it says you have Bitcoin in your Coinbase account, but that doesn't mean you actually have Bitcoin. If you move it off there, and I think that's why they limit their withdrawals, is because some days they don't necessarily have the matching amount of Bitcoin that they do the deposits on that exchange. So that's why they limit it, because it would be essentially like a bank run on Coinbase. If everybody went to withdraw their Bitcoin from there, but they didn't have enough Bitcoin, that's a problem for them. And so they have to limit their withdrawals to make sure that nothing like that happens.
Yeah. So when you have your Bitcoin with an exchange, they might have, let's say they have 1,000 Bitcoin, but you're never going to know if they have your Bitcoin, because the thing is that it's all shared with multiple people. You don't know the other people that are working with them. Let's say you know other people who have small amounts of Bitcoin, but if you combine the small amounts of Bitcoin that you know of, you're never going to get to the total amount of Bitcoin that they have. So they have all these massive number of clients. So they could have, let's say, 1,000 Bitcoin in a wallet, but what if their customers are actually owed 10,000 Bitcoin. Where's that extra 9,000 Bitcoin going to come from? And you won't know until enough Bitcoin leaves that exchange. And this is partly why putting Bitcoin in your own wallet is almost like an attack on exchanges. Because exchanges,
Absolutely.
right? Because exchanges are almost, in a way, exchanges rely on you leaving your Bitcoin on their exchange so that they can continue with their fractional reserve banking. Like Coinbase, that system that I mentioned there, they show you, they have 1,000 Bitcoin, but they actually owe 10,000 Bitcoin. They assume that people who own 9,000 Bitcoin will never withdraw their Bitcoin. So they think that they can keep charging you fees by selling you, I guess, fake Bitcoin. That's where paper Bitcoin come from. That's where paper Bitcoin comes from. And the only way to avoid that is to put Bitcoin in your own self-custody, to buy Bitcoin and put it in your own wallet that nobody else can take over. Nobody else can stop. Nobody else can move. If we go back to that mempool website, any Bitcoin transaction that you see on there, any Bitcoin wallet that you see on there, the only people who can move that Bitcoin are the ones who have the private keys. If you don't have the private keys to that Bitcoin, it's not your Bitcoin.
Yes.
If you have Bitcoin on an exchange, it's not your Bitcoin. You might think it is. It might they might try to convince you that it's your Bitcoin, but it's not your Bitcoin because you don't have the private keys to it. You can't move it.
Yeah, and you can call the bluff, right? Like, we assume, or we hope that Coinbase is a good actor in the space as far as holding the actual Bitcoin they say they have, right? But we're not. We're trusting that. We're hoping for that. And there's a saying in Bitcoin: "Don't trust, verify." And the way to verify is doing that layer one transaction that started this entire conversation, calling the bluff, saying, "Hey, do you actually have my Bitcoin? Can I have it right now?" And withdrawing that into self-custody and ownership. And you're taking it off the exchange. People kind of, there's all this trading that goes on that looks at exchange volume and amounts of Bitcoin on exchange. By taking that out of the exchange's hands, you're potentially taking it out of circulation, and therefore making the price will reflect that, right? The lower amounts of Bitcoin on exchange. And if there is any funny games going on, that is total price suppression. If there's paper Bitcoin, that's going to manipulate the price like crazy. So by taking your Bitcoin into self-custody, you are limiting, as much as you can as an individual, limiting the ability of bad actors to manipulate the Bitcoin price.
I just thought of something. Do you guys think that's why Coinbase always goes down when Bitcoin starts running? Because
there's probably a couple different reasons.
If the price goes, like, maybe if it's intentional, I don't know if it's intentional, if it's not, this is just pure speculation.
100%.
The way that right? Like,
yeah.
What if they're doing it so that, because if they create paper Bitcoin, they're basically selling it at the market price. I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just saying, like, what if just a different way to think, right? So if they're creating Bitcoin, they're selling it at the market price. They're expecting that Bitcoin's price will underperform whatever they sold. They're basically shorting Bitcoin. They're shorting naked, basically. That's what it's called, naked shorting. That's what happened with GME. So if they sell enough Bitcoin that they don't have, and enough of the world starts taking self-custody, and enough of the world starts buying Bitcoin, eventually Coinbase is not going to be a majority portion of all trades. Eventually there will be multiple exchanges. That's where the world is going. Eventually these companies that are trying to manipulate the supply by creating paper Bitcoin, they're going to get punished exactly like FTX. That's essentially what FTX did. Maybe Coinbase isn't doing it. I mean, it's definitely possible because they're audited, but you don't know who you can trust. You have no idea. Even if you were to give your Bitcoin to us, you can't trust us. Even though you've watched our videos for so long, you can't give your, let's say you have 1,000 Bitcoin, you give it to us. How do you know that we're not just going to disappear?
Yeah. I mean, there's a good incentive for us to do so, right?
Right.
I mean, and then, you can trust us, but you shouldn't. You shouldn't,
yes.
Right? That's the idea there. And the other thing too is just that, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
I actually wanted to mention 1,000 Bitcoin right now seems like a lot, but whatever Bitcoin you have, this is something that Jor says on his channel all the time. Whatever amount of Bitcoin you have, eventually it'll be worth the same as whatever 1,000 Bitcoin is worth today in terms of dollars. Right. So if you have one Bitcoin, that one Bitcoin is going to be worth 1,000 times what it's worth today. So protect your Bitcoin like it is worth 1,000 times what it is today.
And take custody of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I think about it. Is I don't know which one of you said this, but this is how everybody should be thinking about it. unless your Bitcoin is in a place where you actually have the 12 or 24 words to that wallet, then you don't actually own that Bitcoin. That's the easiest test to figure it out. On Coinbase, you don't have a 12-word private key to that. On Wallet of Satoshi, you don't have a 12-word private key to that. You have to have those private keys. That's the only way that you actually have ownership of that Bitcoin. Otherwise, it's an IOU from somebody else.
Yeah.
So think about it like cash in your hand, physical cash in your house. You probably feel a lot more safe with that versus leaving it in a bank. And it's the exact same thing. Money in the bank is just an IOU from the bank saying that they owe you this, right? That's all it is. And that's what Bitcoin held on an exchange is. And that's what Bitcoin held in a custodial wallet is, the same thing. So
I just had a quick comment that I wanted to say about the Coinbase going down while the price is going up. There's this saying, never attribute malice to what can be explained with ignorance. And I think Coinbase is just a dog shit company. I don't think necessarily there's paper Bitcoin or there's malice there. I think they underfund their servers. They don't know what they're doing. I think they're trash. I just think they're a stupid company.
There's something also to consider here. I completely understand your point there. Just something a little bit different. Keep in mind that not everybody is going to be able to take self custody.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have
100%. 100%.
You have like the people who are in Bitcoin now are very early because they can interact with the base layer of Bitcoin. And if you think about the wire transfer the current financial system with wire transfers, how many times have you sent a wire transfer? I think I've maybe sent
a handful.
Yeah, I've sent half a dozen max.
Yeah, maybe 1 to 10. Most people in the chat, I mean, if you want to mention it, how many times have you sent a wire transfer? Most people haven't. And that's, I think the Bitcoin base layer is even more secure than wire transfers. So it's the availability to transact on the Bitcoin base layer is going to be more scarce. So keep in mind that you have a limited amount of time where you can actually take self-custody of your money. Eventually, you're not going to be able to, you're not going to have enough Bitcoin to be able to make it worthwhile to transact on the base layer. Eventually, everybody's going to be on these layer 2s like Lightning. I don't know what's going to happen in 10, 15 years, but I don't think that the amount of block space can expand enough to account for every single transaction that's ever going to happen. You're going to have servers running the Bitcoin nodes. You're going to have Amazon web services running Bitcoin nodes. You're not going to be able to do it at home because it's going to require so much more space. So over time, people are going to have to move to layer 2s, layer 3s, layer 5s. There's probably going to be layer 10s on top of Bitcoin. People are very confused about that. People think that, Bitcoin is supposed to be a way to get rid of centralization, but no, that's not the point. The point is that the base layer is so solid that nothing can change it. Nothing can stop it from working exactly how it's supposed to work. So let's say if the US government wants to print more Bitcoin, they can't. If the US government goes bankrupt and everybody on earth is on a Bitcoin standard, the US government's bankruptcy doesn't affect everybody else's finances. So that's exactly what applies here. So if you have your Bitcoin in self-custody and Coinbase collapses, you're not impacted. You may be impacted temporarily because Bitcoin's price might fall, but over the long term, you're not impacted because you still have the exact amount of Bitcoin that you thought you had. So if you have 1 Bitcoin, you still have 1 Bitcoin, even if Coinbase goes bankrupt. So if you take self-custody, remember, you're in that very temporary, that temporarily available time where you can actually take self-custody. That's the first thing. And the next thing is that self-custody is going to protect you no matter what. Like, it's going to protect you if your exchanges go bankrupt, if the entire world bans Bitcoin, nobody can take your Bitcoin from you unless they get your private keys from you. So taking self-custody is, it's going to be very rare. People who actually take self-custody are going to be very rare, at least from what I think. I think people are going to get paid directly on layer 2s, layer 3s. They're going to get paid on Lightning. They're going to get paid on Lightning, and they're going to have their own wallet, let's say with a bank. Maybe MicroStrategy might create some kind of layer 2, layer 3, layer 5, and they'll provide the liquidity for it, right? Yeah, exactly, strats. But over time, So over time, taking self-custody is the best thing you can do, and it's very rare. So in 10 years, 15 years, you may not be hearing people talking about this really at all.
It's possible. I mean, we're kind of projecting an idea into the future and seeing, making a prediction, which is really, really, really hard to do. There's also the possibility that we have some breakthroughs in hardware technology, and it actually makes it easier to makes it so easy to run nodes that then making the block size bigger and making their more throughput, more thorough traffic, and less expensive on the base layer makes sense because of how cheap it is now to run a node because of breakthroughs in technology. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying I'm advocating for that. I'm just saying that's a possible future. That expanding the block size doesn't mean that it all has to go to AWS and that only companies and massive server farms can run the blockchain. We don't really know what the future is, but as far as where we're trending, and if we extrapolate out where we are, it is likely that what Rajat is saying it will come true, which is that it will be very difficult to do on-chain base layer transactions, and we will have a robust layer 2 and layer 3 systems that interact and actually use real Bitcoin, but in a cheaper, more efficient, faster microtransaction style way, with maybe collaborative type custody situations like Fediments, like layer 2, or like a sidechain like Liquid solves a lot of the issues that, I would say the main issue that Lightning has, which is that Lightning really lends itself to a custodial scenario. It's much easier to use Lightning using somebody else's Lightning channel than to run your own. Whereas with Liquid Bitcoin, it's a side chain, you peg in Bitcoin, and that is held in like a large multisig. So you're trusting some third parties, but you're trusting enough of them that it's essentially next to impossible for them to rug you out of that Bitcoin. Whereas with a custodial scenario with Lightning, you're trusting basically one counterparty. So that is a vulnerability and risk. But these are only the technologies we have so far on top of Bitcoin. There's going to be more and more developed on this. I personally think the smartest people in the world are working on Bitcoin. They're working on Bitcoin and they're working on AI. The two smartest groups of people in the world are working on those two technologies because they're the most fundamental game-changing technologies that we have currently and into the future.
So, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to
say, like, that's something that not a whole lot of people talk about within Bitcoin, is just not only the capital flowing out of the fiat system, but also the intelligence. Like it's a real brain drain flowing from these government, decentralized entities, the fiat system in general. Everybody who knows, has some vision and some ability is building on Bitcoin right now. And that's a pretty good sign. I think that's a place you want to be, not where everybody was before, but where everybody's going to, which is Bitcoin.
Skate to where the puck is going to be.
Yeah, agreed. So ICE-OH there said, so what Rajat is saying, that essentially 1 million sats won't be spendable, so it's not worth self-custodying it. No, I don't agree with that. I think 1 million sats is going to be so much money that people won't even be able to imagine having that amount of Satoshis. 1 million Satoshis is going to be way more than the average person is ever going to come across. So if you have 1 million sats in self-custody, at some point, you're definitely going to be able to use that. You're going to be able to, if fiat still survives, you're going to be able to take loans against it. Can you imagine if you have 1 million sats in self-custody today, at some point you're able to take a $500,000 loan against it? That'd be crazy.
Yep. The other thing here too is the mempool is a little bit unpredictable, because if you look in the past, there was times where people were paying like 77 sats per VByte, but priced in dollars, that's less than what it costs now to send 1 sat per VByte. But you look back at that, whoa, 77 sats, like you're spending like 1,000 sats to do a transaction, but it's like 10 cents or whatever it is. Like it's incredibly cheap. But there was a lot of demand for block space, and there's a lot of efficiencies that have been developed over time, like batch transactions, layer 2s. Again, a lot of activity on Lightning has taken on-chain transactions out of the mempool. We'll just see more efficiencies with that. So there could be, again, the future is very unpredictable, but there could be a scenario in the future where you can do on-chain transactions, again, if you have a large amount enough, because the layer 2s and the layer 3s are taking so much activity off of that on-chain still. Like right now, you can totally do on-chain transactions. It's like 1 to 4 sats per VByte. It's really not that competitive. People are not dying for block space right now. There's not a huge, lineup to get into the mempool. It's pretty easy to do on chain right now.
And while we're talking about layer one transactions, the one thing I would say where a lot of people get this wrong is they've seen some Bitcoin transactions that might cost $10 or $15 worth of Bitcoin, because when the mempool gets busier, when there's more people wanting to use it, you have to pay a higher fee based on the priority, how fast you want that to go through. But it doesn't really matter how much you're sending. You could actually send $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. If that's all in one UTXO, that's going to cost you about 10 cents today. So it has nothing to do with the amount of Bitcoin that you're sending. It has everything to do with the amount of data or the amount of UTXOs that you're sending within that transaction. So that's something to be aware of. I know there's a whole different thing, that we could talk about. We could honestly spend 4 hours talking about this because there's so many intricacies to know about this. And one thing we're doing is actually we're building speaking of getting off of YouTube, we're actually building our own school community right now. And we'll probably mention it a little bit later in the episode, but it's going to have every single resource you'll need to know about this kind of stuff, about UTXOs, about managing your private keys, about sending a layer one transaction. We're going to put something together using what we already have, plus build on top of that, just so everybody's very comfortable holding their own keys. That's the whole point of what we're doing here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and over time we're going to be building that up. We're going to be creating more and more content on there, adding more value to that. The price. So we're still thinking about what the price should be today, but over time the price will go up. We're going to continue to increase the price as more information is added to it, as we add more value to it. We're going to do some schedule of live sessions that we do only on there, and we're not going to do those live sessions on here. We're going to try to make it as valuable as possible.
Yeah, the value is going to grow and the cost is going to grow associated with that value.
Yeah, right. So do you think should we share that link right now with people? Do you have it, Rajat? Do you have it handy?
I do. I'll find it here.
So this is something we've been working on for about the last month. We kind of have the basics in there right now. We're going to be adding stuff pretty much every day for the next, foreseeable future. And so what kind of our idea is here, because we don't have a whole lot on there right now, is we're going to have a very cheap introductory price. And then I think after 50 members, we're going to increase it. We're going to double it. And we're just going to keep doing that until, it gets to a point where it doesn't make sense for people to join. But we'll see how high that gets to. So if you are wanting to join our school community, Rajat, did you share it there?
I'm going to share it now. I was just checking to make sure it's good. Yeah, so
kind of the idea here is that we're going to set the introductory price to be $21 per month. After the first 50 members sign up, we're going to increase it to be $42 per month, because we really believe that the content and the value that we have in here in terms of Bitcoiners learning how to protect their keys and secure their keys, plus a lot of other things, is way beyond this value. We want to make sure that it's still attainable to the average person. We know there's a lot of people with a lot of money in here, but there's also a lot of people who don't have as much money in here. So if you want to get in there, you're going to have the first chance to get in at the introductory price, and then it's just going to keep going up and up and up from there. So it should be in the chat there. Rajat just shared it, and
you lock in that price that you get in at. So that's
right.
That's really key. There's a real incentive to get in early. So
yeah. So basically, I mean, just to kind of, because that's an important part. That was a question that I had, is like, if somebody joined today at $21 and we increase the price, would they also get increased with that? But the answer is no. You actually lock in that price forever. We're actually going to have some SATs ability too that we'll be reaching out to members for if you'd rather pay in Bitcoin. But for now, we'll just leave it as it is there. So again, there's not a whole lot in there today, but we do plan on adding a lot over these next couple of weeks. And we kind of want to just give everybody, people watching today, the opportunity to get in at that first initial price there.
Hey, George, do you mind just sharing it in the Maple Bitcoin channel and on your channel as well? Because it only shares on mine and Forest's there.
Yeah.
Can you send it to me in the private chat? I don't have the link to it.
Oh, here, I got it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, boys. So that's kind of like the layer one. I think that's an incredibly important part of Bitcoin to understand. And that was kind of the first real light bulb moment for me within Bitcoin, was when I sent my first transaction on chain. And, you're sending an on-chain transaction every time you withdraw your Bitcoin from an exchange, but it's a whole different scenario, I think, when you're actually going through the process of setting it up on your Sparrow wallet, signing the transaction yourself, and then broadcasting it. And you can send value to anybody else on this planet without anybody, giving you permission to do it. Not that the banks have ever said, Jor, what are you doing here? But it is, I've taken deposits into the bank before for $1,000, and they asked, where'd you get this from? And it's like, it's none of your business where I got this from. That's why you're a bank. You're supposed to hold this for me, right? And you don't need to ask all these questions. So it's a very powerful thing, sending your very first transaction on the Bitcoin Layer 1 network.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have any tips for people on that in terms of like what they should be using, considerations in terms of like maybe amounts, things like that? I think that this could be valuable for people too.
Are you saying how much Bitcoin they should keep in those?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's a wrong question here. Those are two separate questions. When you're taking it off of the exchange, that's an on-chain transaction, but you're not really setting it up yourself. But maybe just explain like the implications of sending very small amounts from an exchange to your cold storage wallet.
Oh yeah. So I think you have to pay attention to UTXOs. So UTXO management is the key here. So on Mempool, if you take a look at a lot of the wallets, you're going to see that it shows you the UTXOs. I'm just going to share my screen here, and then I'll find a wallet that actually has some UTXOs. So what you're going to see is those wallets on Mempool are going to have a bunch. Some of them are going to have a bunch of UTXOs, and the more UTXOs you have, the more it costs to maintain your wallet. How would you guys explain this?
Well, if you had a bunch of small UTXOs and you wanted to send a large amount, you'd have to bundle those UTXOs together. And Jor alluded to this earlier, but the cost is with sending Bitcoin is associated with the data, not the actual amount of Bitcoin, not the like purchasing power or dollar amount or number of Bitcoin. It's the amount of data. So if you're sending a bunch of UTXOs to make one transaction, and whoa, that was loud. Then it's more expensive to send it. So with UTXO management, it's kind of a good idea to have larger chunks, larger, you could say like bills of Bitcoin. And then if you send those, you're only sending from one UTXO, and you'll receive a change address back if you're sending less amount of Bitcoin.
What's that noise? Is that on Mempool?
I think it's the school. I think it's the school channel. It's people signing up.
Oh, nice.
How do I remove that? How do I make that sound go
no,
away?
Keep it coming.
Oh, keep it. Yeah, that's people signing up. That's so cool.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, keep that on there so people know you get the intro price up to the first 50 on there.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll leave it on. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys the UTXOs. This is what the UTXOs are. So we can see here, this wallet has a shitload of UTXOs. You can see actually the amount of UTXOs. Oh, it has 128 UTXOs. So at some point, they're worth 193K. Wow, another person. So so at some point, they're going to have to consolidate all of these UTXOs. You can see that here. 20K sats. There's another one here. 20K sats, 20K, 86K, 219K, 100K, and it keeps going. You have a bunch of small UTXOs. These are just small amounts of Bitcoin. So at some point, yeah, exactly. Small amounts of these are pieces of data that show you small amounts of Bitcoin, I guess. Is that the right way to say it? Yep. So over time, at some point, if this person wants to spend their Bitcoin, they're going to have to pay higher fees. So let's say if we can actually find transactions on here where you can see a bunch of UTXOs for a transaction. So you can see here, this transaction has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 UTXOs, and it costs them $1.28. On the other hand, this person has only one UTXO. It costs them 60 cents. And then if we go lower, we can see this one cost $4.18 because you can see how many UTXOs they have here. All of these ones I guess they consolidated all of them, right? And they paid 3,910 Satoshis, while this person, again, paid 23 cents for the one Satoshi to move one UTXO. Right. So if you consolidate your UTXOs, if you back to I guess the main point here, Jor was saying if you buy small amounts of Bitcoin and you move them to your wallet, this is what you have to deal with. So if you buy $5, $10, $20 worth of Bitcoin and you move it to your wallet right away, This is what you're going to deal with. You're going to have a bunch of UTXOs. And in the future, if the transaction fees on Bitcoin go up, then you're going to see that it's going to cost you a lot more. So if we go back to block 840,000, that was one of the ones where the transaction fees were the highest. You can see here, one transaction, there were transactions that cost something like $60. It was crazy. Yeah, there were a lot of, I don't know why these transactions are lower. I don't know how they got through, but there were a lot of transactions that cost $60, $80, $150. This person paid $8,000 for whatever reason. They paid extra.
That's on the halving block?
Yeah, this is the halving block,
Yeah.
840,000. So some people just wanted to have their transactions included because they wanted to create runes, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? So this one, a very basic transaction, just one UTXO. They paid 101 sats per VByte and it cost them $9.23. So now if you have a bunch of UTXOs, let's say you have 1,000 UTXOs and they're worth 1,000 Satoshis each, you're going to be paying like $400, $500, $600 for a transaction. Like you can see here, $38.24 for one transaction.
Yes. And Network Freddy just asked this question. I think this is important to address right now. So he says, so hold Bitcoin on Coinbase for how long before moving to a cold storage? So what you want to do there is, like, let's say you're buying $5 worth of Bitcoin every day or something, or $50 a week. You could actually use Coinbase in that case to let it build up, let's say to 500,000 sats before you actually move it to your cold storage wallet. That's what you want to do there. I've made this mistake before where I was buying $8 of Bitcoin every week. And every time I'd buy it, I would send it to my cold storage. And it cost me about $200, I think, to consolidate that, down the road. So it's definitely something you need to be aware of. There are actually exchanges such as Bitcoin Well here in Canada. I think River and Strike allow it in the US, where you can actually do Lightning withdrawals, which is a much better way to do it, in my opinion. And with that, it would basically be from an exchange to your Lightning wallet, and then to your Aqua wallet. And from there, you can just leave it there for a while because you actually hold the keys to your Aqua wallet. So that's a nice way. That's kind of what I do with mine.
And then on Aqua wallet, they manage your UTXOs for you, right?
I believe so. And you can also, if you wanted to, the nice thing about that is you can actually take your 12 words from your Aqua wallet if you wanted to, because again, Aqua wallet is a hot wallet. The keys were generated online. And so you could actually plug that into a Sparrow wallet, which has a very nice interface for managing your UTXOs. And you'd be able to take your Aqua wallet, 12 words, put it into Sparrow, and you'd be able to manage your UTXOs from Sparrow. I believe. I've done that myself. I don't know if I did something that, something crazy there, but that's what I've done before.
And just for another a way to describe it, if you're doing that $50 a week in Coinbase, that $50 that you buy of Bitcoin isn't creating another UTXO, because it's all internal accounting. So you only create a UTXO when you move your amount of Bitcoin from an exchange like Coinbase to your own wallet. That's the creation of a new UTXO. So you want to allow it to build up to a size where you believe that it will be future-proof to whatever degree you need it to be for the transaction fees on chain. So whether that's, some people believe 100,000 Satoshis is enough. Some people think you don't want to go below 1 million Satoshis in UTXO size. It's really dependent on what you believe the future fee market is going to be like, and what, like, if you're only holding it for a month and you don't think that the fee market is going to go nuts within a month, you might not need that size of a UTXO because transactions are still so cheap on chain. But if you believe in a possible future where fees could go really high, you might want to hold a larger UTXO for a longer cold storage hold.
I think best practice is to do a little bit of both. Like, don't have like one set amount where you're sending like 1 million sats every time. That's kind of stupid in my opinion, because you don't know what those sats are going to be worth in 20 years from now. And the whole concern, you have to do a very good job of managing both the future transaction fees and future privacy concerns. So with the transaction fees, that's when you want some higher UTXOs where it's not going to cost you a lot to move it. But with your privacy, let's say that you had a 10 million sat UTXO and you had to spend some of that Bitcoin. And let's say 1 sat equals $1 and you had to send somebody that Bitcoin. They would be able to actually follow that back into your UTXO and see that you had 10 million sats in that UTXO that you sent it out of. So that's a big privacy concern for you. It's a safety risk, in my opinion. And so you have to have a good mixture of larger UTXOs for like the longer term stuff, but also some smaller UTXOs that you actually might spend in the future. Think about it this way. let's say there's a millionaire or even a billionaire, and he sent an e-transfer to somebody for $200. And that person who received that e-transfer for $200 would be able to look back and see his bank balance that he sent it from. That's essentially what you're doing here with large UTXOs that you're going to be spending from in the future. You're putting a big target on your back by having only large UTXOs. So you should have some large ones. You should have some medium-sized ones. You should have some smaller ones. And then you can kind of pick and choose what you need to in the future. That's the best practice that I've found anyways.
What's great with that too is if you have, say, 0.5 Bitcoin on an exchange, it's really, and you're wanting to move it to cold storage for the first time, it's very, very nerve-wracking moving that as one UTXO. And so what you can do is you could move $100 worth of, you could move 100,000 sats as your first transaction. If you mess up, make a mistake, yeah, it's terrible to lose that, but you're not losing 0.5 Bitcoin. So, then you can stair step up with your transaction sizes, and then you can have a varying amount of different sized UTXOs based on that. And you can feel confident after doing these smaller transactions, sort of like test transactions or smaller UTXO size transactions, until you do the larger chunks for long-term storage.
Yes. Good 45 minutes here, boys, talking about layer one. I mean, that's what I mean. There's so much to know about this.
Yeah.
And it's important to just be aware of it. Don't expect that you're going to know everything right away. Again, everything with Bitcoin, you should always just take it very slow. Somebody mentioned that in the comments there. This is one thing to know here. Actually, I shouldn't skip this. Praetorian sent in a $10 super chat to the channel. So thank you very much for that. We got a couple super chats here. I saw one from Ginger. We'll probably get to those a little bit later. We'll finish kind of talking about the topic here, and then we'll get to those. But
I think Forrest said he only has an hour, no?
I have an hour and a half now.
Hour and a half. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. So Ty said, is moving from an exchange to Aqua the same as moving to cold storage UTXO wise? Yes, this is what you want to keep in mind with your UTXOs. Every time you receive Bitcoin into your wallet, whatever that amount was, that creates one new UTXO. And when you look at your Bitcoin wallet, it'll say a balance at the top. It might be 1 million sats, 5 million sats. Basically what that balance is, it's just a combination, a sum of all the UTXOs within that wallet. I know it kind of seems straightforward, but that's all it is. It's not one big chunk of Bitcoin. It's all of the sums of your UTXOs. That's your wallet balance. And so just keep that in mind. Every time you receive Bitcoin into your wallet, if you have 12 words associated with that wallet, that's one new UTXO.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
where should we go from here?
We spent quite a bit of time on the checklist. Point one there.
Yeah.
So
I think we just need to build on these topics over time, right? I think this information is probably very new for a lot of people on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You guys, maybe we can do talking about sending a layer 2 transaction another time. Like each one of these is like a 45-minute thing on a live, I feel like. And there's a lot of good questions as well. I think we should maybe hit some questions. What do you guys think? Yeah,
I'm good with that. There's a lot of good questions here. Actually, there's a couple here that we should maybe just clear up on for this conversation anyways, then we can move on to the next topic. But Struggle for Sat says 2 wallets necessary for privacy. No, you don't necessarily need 2 wallets here. You just need different UTXOs. So if you were to send like a large UTXO to somebody, or like, let's say that you had a UTXO, you sent 1 million sats into your wallet and you wanted to spend 10,000 sats in the future. Whoever you send that 10,000 sats to in the future is going to be able to look back from that specific address or UTXO and see that you had 1 million sats in there. But you could have 50 different UTXOs within your wallets. You don't have to pull from all of them. You don't need 2 wallets here. You can just have different UTXOs and make sure that you're using different receive addresses within your wallet too, which is a big reason why we don't recommend people use the Tangem wallet. It's one of the ones we get asked a lot of questions about. And the main issue with Tangem is that there's only one receive address. So that's the kind of example that I always use. If you had like a full Bitcoin on a Tangem wallet and you wanted to send 1,000 or 100,000 sats to somebody, they would be able to look back and see that you had one full Bitcoin in that wallet because there's only one address that you're using in that wallet. So good wallets like Sparrow, like Aqua, you can use different addresses. They're all within that same wallet, but they're all different UTXOs and Bitcoin addresses in there. So that's more what you need to look out for.
Yeah.
3 points.
What was that other one that I wanted to get here? Oh, here's one from Ethan. Do you guys recommend hardware wallets? If so, how can you say using a commercial hardware wallet is acceptable when you can't verify the software that's installed on it?
I
Do you
think
guys have thoughts on this? I would say that in terms of the hardware wallets themselves, so if you get a cold card and you derive a private key from that cold card, it's all done offline. You have to trust CoinKite a little bit there, I think, or is that the point of the secure element within that cold card?
Well, you have to trust that that actually is a secure element chip within that cold card, and
Right.
it's not just a chip that only generates one address or a set of addresses that they know of. Because that they've designed a chip that you can't reverse engineer and derive what it's generated. So it generates these wallets at total random, and that's what you're trusting, that these hardware wallets have actually created that chip properly. And yeah, so the idea here really is to look for something that's open source, because that has the most eyeballs on the code to, and still, like, none of us are coders, so we aren't the ones verifying this. We are allowing there's always some element of trust to some degree. You want to mitigate that. You want to lower the amount of trust you have to have. But with an open source project, you are trusting that enough people have looked over that code to see that there isn't any malicious intent and any bugs within that software or hardware. And that's the case with something like Cold Card or Blockstream Jade or Foundation, these open source Bitcoin hardware wallets.
I want to ask, it's possible to, so with Cold Card, for example, you can use the dice method where you roll 100 dice and then you put in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to confirm that whatever output you get on your Cold Card is what it's supposed to be based on like a BIP39 calculator? So if you put in the numbers in the same order, let's say if you go on Google and you search BIP39 calculator and you put in the same numbers in the same order, it should give you the same output as whatever your wallet gives you, right?
I believe so. I'm
So
not
you can-
100% on that.
So technically you should be able to confirm that. I mean, it's not like you're going to put your private key on that BIP39 calculator on Google,
Right.
but you could technically confirm that the output that you get from your wallet is the same as the output that you get on this calculator online, right? I guess that kind of proves that the wallet is a secure element, because if it's different, or it has a secured element, because if it's different, then that means that it's coming from a pre-approved set of private keys.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And another way to mitigate that is actually getting something called a seed signer, where it actually you fully generate it yourself, but you're not trusting any other company to do that. It's a little bit more complex. I wouldn't suggest that for like the average Bitcoiner. I've never used it myself, so I can't really comment on it. But that's usually what people say. If you don't want to trust like a company like CoinKite or like Blockstream to generate that private key, you can actually do it yourself with seed signer.
Oh, great point from Ethan too. Just because the screen of your Cold Card shows a certain output doesn't prove that its internal software is going to use that key that it displays. So what do you do here? I guess you can create your own wallet if you're paranoid enough.
Yeah. That's kind of what the seed signer does.
Like these are really great questions, by the way. I
Yeah.
think this is so valuable, because even I hadn't thought of like what Ethan just said, just because of what you have highlighted there. Just because the screen of your Cold Card shows that, it doesn't mean that that's actually what's happening in the background. It's almost like if you have your balance on Coinbase, the balance is there, but it's not like that may not actually be what they have. They may not actually have Bitcoin associated directly with your account.
Right.
Could you not? I mean, it would. You could do it as a test, sort of to see if it's actually accurate. But could you not just generate a wallet private key and then restore that somewhere else to make sure that it is what it says it is, that it generated what it said it generated?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that'd be a way to do it. And the other thing too is there's these companies that generate or that create these hardware wallets. They want to instill trust, and it's like if Cold Card messes around with anything, they're completely done. Like we can see like the attempts with, I mean, Ledger is such a massive amount of the hardware wallet market out there, but like, they've done a couple little things that have created huge mistrust. And like Bitcoiners that are deep in this, they won't touch a ledger at all, right? Because
Great point.
and they haven't actually like lost anybody's funds directly through their hardware, but they've created potential vulnerabilities with like not updating their software, or for having back end compatibility for private key management with Ledger. It's just like that stuff alone, which isn't necessarily going to lose you your Bitcoin, but those things alone are enough to turn people off of that project, or to using that hardware.
Great point.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that's a key with everything within Bitcoin. I mean, we're still only 16 years into this, but I mean, if you show any sort of sign of mistrust or poor integrity within Bitcoin, you just get wiped off the planet quickly.
Nobody wants to do business with you.
Yes.
And what Mr. Dinkle said there, this is the funny name. This is where really smart people lose their coins. I agree with you. I built my own wallet. Even if you try to build your own wallet, you don't know all the details. There's a reason why Cold Card is the business it is today, right? If somebody could just randomly build a wallet on their own, if somebody could just build something like that, and they don't have to prove that they know what they're doing, everybody would have a small wallet business.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, and actually, I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about something else, but I wanted to mention the Verhofty Flufen said, which ledger will no longer be supported? Is it the Nano S?
I believe it's the Nano S. Yeah, it's they're dropping support for it. They're like phasing out support, so you have to upgrade to their Nano S Plus or whatever other wallets they have.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So if there's any potential changes to Bitcoin, or I don't know, any vulnerabilities that have been found, those won't be patched through software updates for those old Nano S's.
Yeah.
I think we should touch on this quickly for Nav. He said, what are you all talking about? Got me all confused with all this wallet stuff. We shouldn't trust wallets. No, that's not what we're saying at all here. Definitely not what we're saying. We're saying the wallets that we recommend here are Cold Card, Passport, and Jade. And the reason why we support those wallets are because they are Bitcoin only. You don't need to connect them to the internet. You have multiple receive addresses that you can link up with your Sparrow wallet. And they are all either open source or a verifiable source. That's what you should be looking for. We're not advising people here to go out and create your own wallet. That's what Rajat just alluded to there. Don't worry about that. The thing that we want people, our goal of this show, I think today, was obviously to get people to get their Bitcoin off of the exchanges. That's the first point of centralization and failure here. But then just start looking at steps like Aqua Wallet. That's kind of a first in between the exchange and a hardware wallet. Aqua, I like that wallet a lot. And then go to something like a Cold Card. I would avoid, honestly, the Ledgers of the world, the Tangems of the world. There's a couple other that I forget the name of them there, but always make sure that they're Bitcoin only, they're open source. And what was the other one I had there? I forget.
Verifiable source if it's not necessarily free and open source.
So what would you guys say to this question here from Ethan? If you buy a hardware wallet with pre-installed software, it's no better than trusting Coinbase. Probably worse. No, I don't agree with that.
Not at all. I mean, so there's layers of trust with Coinbase. Coinbase is also custodying that Bitcoin somewhere with a type of hardware wallet. So it's not worse. It's there's the additional layer of that. You're trusting Coinbase, and Coinbase is still custodying that Bitcoin somehow, and you're trusting that they're doing that properly. So no, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, that doesn't really make any sense, because with Coinbase, you can't move your Bitcoin. You have to get permission. Even if you get a Cold Card, and even if you use something that's not that has pre-installed software, then you know that you can still move that Bitcoin. With Coinbase, you can't do that at all.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say to this too is, if you are considering buying a hardware wallet, there's a couple things that you should know about, actually. And one of those things is, like, don't buy it from Best Buy. Don't buy it from Amazon. Don't buy it from anywhere other than the supplier itself. So if you're getting a Cold Card, get it directly from CoinKite. What's that, Forrest?
Facebook Marketplace. I see ledgers on there all the time. I'm just like, this is a scam, like straight up.
Yeah, like, Ethan, do you really think that it'd be worth CoinKite's time to, like, put malware or something in these devices so they can get a couple Bitcoin from people like us versus like their old company as a whole and everything that they have at stake here? I don't think so. And kind of what we're saying here is we don't really have to trust them. All the code that they use within their hardware and the hardware that they use, and the software, I guess, would be within there too, is all verifiable source. So you can look at this yourself. You're not trusting them. You're trusting them with somebody like Ledger, who is closed source. You're trusting them with somebody like Tangem, who is also closed source. But the reason why we're talking about these hardware wallets is because you can actually take self-custody of them. You generate the keys offline, and you can verify the fact that they are doing what they're intended to do, essentially, through their open source.
I think so. He posted something else here. You don't actually know that, though. I agree with that. You don't actually know that, though, because you have no idea what software came pre-installed. The point is you have a massive amount of trust. This is the way that humans are. If you don't trust you have to trust something. There has to be something that you trust. If you don't trust your farmer, you're not going to eat. If you don't trust the restaurant, you're not. What are you going to do? You're going to grow everything on your own. You're going to grow everything in your backyard. How are you going to build how are you even going to build a house? You're going to do it yourself. You're going to build it from scratch yourself.
You're not going to trust the 2x4s that you build it with.
Yeah, exactly. How do you trust the wood that came? What if it's fake wood? What if it's meant to self-destruct at some point? What if it has TNT inside it and it's detonated from some remote location? You can't trust anything.
Exactly.
How are you going to live your life? You
just got to manage your risk. That's the whole thing. You got to manage your risk properly. And again, we're telling you to avoid things that are closed source that you can't verify. And we're advising, I'm not saying we're telling you what to do here, but we're advising that you use something that's open source and verifiable to manage your risk a little bit better. That's what this whole thing, everything has trade-offs in life, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should move on to some other questions here.
Yeah. Good idea.
I think those are great, though. I think those are very valuable. Even I learned something there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Avoid the TNT wood. A couple things that I wanted to mention here, though, is number one, we got a lot of people in here today. This is being aired on Rajat's Twitter, so there's more viewers than usual here. But we're a couple of subscribers away from 4,000 on the Maple Bitcoin channel. So I just shared the link there in the YouTube. So if you don't mind, if you're watching this on Forrest's channel or Rajat's channel, just go over to Maple Bitcoin and subscribe. It would eventually, we want to get to the point here where we're only on Maple Bitcoin. We're not on other channels, and we just don't want you to miss out on that. The second one is if you are kind of a little bit more advanced within Bitcoin, we do recommend an exchange here in Canada called Bitcoin Well. And the reason why we like them is because they actually don't hold any Bitcoin. There's zero risk of you losing your Bitcoin to an exchange, because basically you just send the money, you give them your receive address, and they send you the Bitcoin without holding the dollars or the Bitcoin. So we love that. We like everything that Bitcoin Well has been doing. So we just shared a link there in the chat. And also, if you're in the US, I just got a brand new link here from River. And I like River because if you are somebody who doesn't want to, take self-custody of it right away, if you want to let your balances build up a little bit, I like River because somebody asked about proof of reserves before. And River within the US, unfortunately, it's not available here in Canada, but if you're in the US, River is a great exchange because they actually show the proof of reserves. You don't have to trust them like you would with a Coinbase or Swan Bitcoin. I don't think they have proof of reserves. I'm pretty sure River is the only one that I'm aware of that has proof of reserves as far as an exchange goes. And the cool thing too is if you're holding cash in there, if you want a little bit of stability in your life, you can actually earn a little bit of Bitcoin and interest, I think, at River for about 4% of your deposits there. So any last comments on this, boys, before we move on?
I just want to say for the referrals, we don't care if you don't go through our referrals. It's perfectly fine.
Yes.
You don't just go to the website, you can. We don't care about the little amount of Bitcoin that they give us. That's perfectly fine. We just want to make sure that you use trusted providers, right? If you're gonna, let's say, for example, if we suggest a wallet to you, we want to make sure that it's something that we trust, that we think is actually going to do well. The Bitcoin community trusts, right? That community aspect is so important because as soon as the community stops valuing something, as soon as the community stops trusting something, it completely falls apart. That happens constantly. That's exactly what happened with FTX. FTX fell apart. People started withdrawing their Bitcoin because more and more people stopped trusting them. They started taking their Bitcoin off, completely fell apart. And now who wants to work with Sam Bankman-Fried again?
No
a couple
one.
Guys in jail, probably.
Yeah, true. He probably has a jail husband.
A couple shout outs here. We do have our QR code there right beside Forrest's head. Oh, what did I miss there, boys?
Rajat said something funny.
Say again.
You'll see it. You'll see it in the replay, I guess.
Okay, so that is our Maple Bitcoin Reserve. We are going to be the biggest Bitcoin company in Canada. No, I don't know. That's our goal, but who knows if it'll happen. But that's a good way to support the channel. We don't have any sponsors here. We want to give you the best information possible. And if you do like what we're doing, you can use that QR code right beside Forrest's head to send us some sats for the trouble today. And a couple people already have. We had VE7 Lee sent in 21 sats. Ballsy Golf sent in 1,117 sats. And we got a Tesla Zap of 369 sats saying happy Friday, boys. So thank you for that. We'll keep this up for the rest of the show. So if you have any comments or questions that you want prioritized, you can send it some sats with a comment on it and we'll address it.
Do you guys want to talk about Ginger's question there? It's been there for a while.
Yeah, we should.
Sorry, Ginger. Okay, so the question here from Ginger is, I'm interested in Harvest, MSTY, or MSTE. I know you did a video on this from Forrest as well. Pros and cons on each, please. Stuck decision. I would like to have a short meeting with whoever would be best with this stuff, please. Well, I'll tell you right away, it'll be Forrest. That's who you want to set up a call with. But Forrest, do you have any, first of all, Ginger, thanks for the super chat there. That's very kind of you. And Forrest, do you have any thoughts on this? I don't even know what MSTE is.
So MSTE is MSTY. So these are both Canadian funds. As soon as you start talking about MSTY, people assume it's the Yield Max US one. These are both Canadian ETFs. So this really goes out to the Canadians out there. MSTY is a fund that holds MSTR shares and sells covered calls on 50% of that. MSTE is the exact same, but with an added 25% leverage. So they take on debt to acquire more MSTR shares, which allows them to create more yield and have different price action based on the added leverage. So the pros and cons, if you can hold this in a tax advantaged account in Canada, which we have the TFSA, which allows you to have dividends tax advantaged and you can withdraw those, and that actually opens up more contribution limit, which is really cool. If you don't have a tax advantaged way of doing this, you're better off just holding the underlying, in my opinion. And it's possible you're better off holding the underlying anyway if you just want growth and total returns. So these are really orientated and geared towards somebody that wants income. And that goes for the US MSTY as well. They're geared towards people that want monthly income to some degree. And the cons of these is that you're capping your upside, because that's what a cover call strategy does. It sells upside potential for premium with the options strategy, and you're exposed to the full downside risk. So you're capping upside, still have the same downside risk. It's a potential hedge if you're trading sideways, as they can kind of manage the strategy and, you know, be strategic with the calls they sell and what gets in the money and what doesn't, all that. But for the most part, generally, it's capped upside, full downside risk. Another con is, or another variable within this is, it's selling volatility. They pay high premiums or pay high dividends because they can get high premiums, because the underlying stocks that they're selling covered calls on are volatile. Now, what we've seen volatility on MSTR go down. So that means that the premiums they're able to pay out, and this goes for the American one as well, the last few months of it have the payouts have been lower because the volatility on MSTR has gone down. Now, I suspect that that's not going to be the case forever. I actually think the volatility on MSTR and of Bitcoin are going to ramp up, that we're at a current low. So there could be a reason to hold something like this that harvests volatility if you suspect that volatility will increase and that we're potentially at a low. But that is a risk, right? And yeah, again, I've done multiple videos of this. I hold a bunch of MSTY in the TFSA and a bunch of MSTE. I have personal experience with this. I have an additional flywheel compounding leveraged system that I've built out to operate with these, with collateralized Bitcoin, and then buying MSTE and, you know, adding to the loan to value, all that. So yeah, feel free to book a call with me if you want. I know you guys have some information on this too, but did I cover all that in there? Yeah.
I have some knowledge on this, but I feel like I don't think somebody should pay me for my time to get my knowledge on this. I think because you've done the deeper research, it'd be better for them to meet with you.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Cool.
Agreed. So Forrest, maybe just quickly for like, this is just a selfish question, but like, what's the difference between MSTY and MSTE? Like if you were just to sum it up in
Good
like one
question.
sentence.
Yeah. So higher risk, higher reward with MSTE. That would be really quick sum up. The added volatility has actually made MSTE perform really well, and I sort of switched my concept around this. Originally, I was like, oh, I don't need the added risk, but the leverage, they're able to get that at really good terms. So they're able to leverage up and increase the volatility, increase the payouts really well with MSTE. MSTE has performed really well. It typically performs. So what we've seen in the past is very, very roughly MSTY, the price action performs something similar to Bitcoin, but has the additional payouts. MSTE, because the added leverage, even with the capped upside and the dividend payouts, performs very similarly to MSTR. So that is kind of how I describe those two things. So you can look at them on the daily, and it's not an exact, but this is really, really rough. But like MSTR is up 2%, MSTE is up 2%, but you get that additional dividend payout, right? Whereas MSTY might be up 1%. So
can you mention
similar.
the dividend payouts on both of them?
Yeah. So right now the dividend payouts, the dividend payouts have fluctuated a little bit, but MSTE is around $17 a share right now and pays out 60 cents per month. The MSTY pays out 36 cents or 40 cents. I think
the last one was 37 cents.
37 cents. And the share price is $12, something like that. So you are getting a higher amount, even with the higher cost of MSTE share price, the payout ratio is still higher. So you are getting more dividend. But that's just because of the added leverage. Now, if MSTR or Bitcoin was to like plummet down, some black swan, MSTE will underperform MSTY because of the added leverage. So that's why I was originally against it in my own portfolio, but I've since sort of turned around and said that added leverage is actually something I'm okay with. But that's really dependent on you as an individual and your risk tolerance.
Oh, can you also mention because I know we have a lot of Americans on this. So can you mention the difference between MSTY US versus MSTY Canadian?
Sure. Yeah. So MSTY Canadian, as I described, it actually owns the underlying MSTR shares and sells covered calls on 50% of that. So it's really structured and really basic and understandable. MSTY US, what they do is they actually own a ton of US Treasury bonds, and then they leverage that to be able to buy a ton of long dated MSTR call options. So they expose themselves to a long position with call options as opposed to holding shares. So it's a leverage play on that, which requires them to have a lot less capital, or they can expose themselves to a lot more of the underlying price action with less capital is one way to look at it. Then they sell covered calls against that. So they sell short in a short expiry on the options, and they hold long on the underlying like a long leaps. Now, so that's something called a synthetic covered call or a poor man's covered call. Those are the two. If you wanted to look deeper into those, you would look up and define what those are, to chat with an AI about it, or look it up on Google or YouTube. And essentially, my opinion on that is, again, there's higher risk, higher reward. And if you look at MSTY, the US's price, it has a lot of it has just been paid out in the dividends. So their price is sort of down, sideways and down, but they're paying out a lot of the gains that they've seen from holding those synthetic covered calls, or those synthetic long positions. They pay those out in their dividends. So people will just look at these funds and think, oh, I'm not interested in the Canadian version of this because the payouts are so small compared to the US ones. The price of the shares of the Canadian ones will reflect the gain of the underlying, whereas the US version, the price of the shares will not reflect the gain of the underlying, because the gain of the underlying gets paid out with the dividends with the premium that they've earned as dividends. So they don't raise the share price, they pay that out, and they pay that out in something called a return of capital. But really, that's just the gain that they've had from holding the underlying long calls. So structurally,
So
very
MSTY
different.
US is more risky.
I would say it is based on synthetic covered call strategies being more risky. So in a downside, so because it's an option, you're exposing yourself to things like theta decay. You're exposing yourself to IV crush. So if volatility falls off a cliff, the value of that option goes down. And
But that will happen with the Canadian one as well.
That will happen to the Canadian one, but less so.
Not as much, I guess. Oh, okay.
Yeah, not the price of the underlying, right? It's more of their ability to generate premium will fall off. So their dividend payments will go down, and maybe the price will go down as well. But the American one, the value of their long position is directly affected by volatility. So not just the premiums they generate, but the long position they hold as well. And then on top of that, options like that long call they have is a levered play. So if there's a downturn in MSTR, their long position is affected outside of that compared to if they were just holding spot shares and selling covered calls in a traditional way. So you have higher downside risk with the US version. Hopefully
Forrest, that's good info. Again,
really good info.
It's a little bit over my head, and that's okay. Like we can only learn so much in this space, and I think Forrest has done one heck of a job covering this on his channel. I also shared a link here in the chat for the video that we shared on the Maple Bitcoin channel. It's about a 40-minute video. I think it's our most popular video on the channel. So if you want a little bit more, if you're looking for something more with MSTY, I think we focus mostly on there. You can check out there. And again, Forrest, I'll make sure to put links to all of our bookings for Forrest, myself, and Rajat within the pinned comments on this one after the show. So you'll be able to find a link to book Forrest if you want some more one-on-one time with him to ask questions specific to your situation.
Yeah, perfect. Cool.
Somebody said here, fascinating explanation, but this is why I just DCA my sats and twiddle my thumbs. It makes sense, right? It makes sense because if you just want long-term growth, that's all you need to do. And if you just hold Bitcoin, if you just hold sats, you'll probably outperform anyways.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, right? You don't have to.
Yeah.
I enjoy the intellectual experiment or like practice of learning about these financial products, and they could potentially fit certain portfolios well or better than Bitcoin. But in my opinion, they're definitely not a better asset than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the innovation that all of these things have been built on top of, right? And you're holding them like, again, I talked about holding this in a TFSA. That's literally an account registered with the Canadian government. So if you did something they didn't like, they could freeze that in a second. And then it's on a brokerage. And if something happens with that brokerage, right? So there's all these layers of vulnerabilities where if you held self-custody Bitcoin, you aren't exposed to any of that. So yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, somebody was talking about NDAX here. I don't know what NDAX is. Where was this question? Somebody was asking
NDAX.
NDAX. So the only two times I've dealt with NDAX is when people called me saying, hey, I can't remove my funds from Index. And I don't know if it was the actual Index website or if it was like a proxy on top of that. But one person lost $60,000 and the other one lost about $35,000 from using this Index exchange. Again, I don't know if it was the actual one or just a proxy that somebody built to fool people on there. But anytime somebody reaches out to you and say they can promise you X amount of gains within Bitcoin, just run as fast as you can.
Yeah. Another one I would not recommend is Bybit. They have like, they just have
Canada,
set,
right?
Yeah, in Canada, they have set fees for withdrawing your Bitcoin. So it's like $50 to withdraw any amount of Bitcoin. So if you want to do it, you want to do a test transaction of like $10, right? Just to make sure that you know what you're doing, or like $100 or something. And a huge portion of that is just going to get eaten up by those ridiculous fees. So stay away from that one as well. I would suggest.
I forgot about that. I was blown away. Somebody went to send me Bitcoin one day, and their fee was $55.
Insane. So stupid.
So what was that again for us? Just so people,
I believe it's Bybit. I believe it's Bybit.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
I helped somebody. Yeah. BYBIT. I helped somebody used this once, or that they bought all their Bitcoin through this. No, this isn't it. This isn't it. It's not Bybit. Let me
Oh.
I,
just-
I never got any bad reviews for NDAX, but I don't know. Maybe it's possible that they have some negatives. But I would stick to Bitcoin only if possible. If you go to a Bitcoin only exchange, I think you're fine.
Yeah.
If you can, even if you use NDAX and you're able to take your Bitcoin out, then you're still fine, right? As long as you can take your Bitcoin out. That's the thing, though. You don't want to leave $60,000 on the exchange before you take it out. That doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, so maybe what I was dealing with was an actual scam. They were just using NDAX as kind of the layer on top. Nav makes a really good point here, and this is I think you should take this with a grain of salt, of course, depending on where you are in your Bitcoin journey. But I think if this is one thing you kind of take from the conversation today, is this: if you do have a multi-sig, you can use different hardware wallets from different sources, and then even if one of the wallets, let's say CoinKite, went rogue for some reason, your Bitcoin would still be safe, because you need two signatures there. Even if somebody were able to get your private key from your cold card, they actually can't do anything if your Bitcoin's in a multi-sig. They would need two signatures there. So that's a great point there from Nav.
Yeah. And the exchange was actually BitBuy. It wasn't Bybit. I got those switched. BitBuy.
Yeah, I thought Bybit was huge. Like Bybit is massive.
Bybit's massive. It's a Dubai exchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nav with another $5. Thank you, Nav. That's 3 of these today for the channel. Says, I know a dude who bought 2 Bitcoin at 2020 lows, sold at 2021 highs to open a hookah lounge, and then went out of business. Never sell your Bitcoin. And speaking of that, just kind of layering on top of that, I saw somebody here. I pinned this one, and it was from Cosmic Wisdom. I don't know if they're still around or not, but said, paid off my mortgage to really start stacking. I don't like that strategy, honestly. I would rather take out a home equity line of credit on the house that I have and buy more Bitcoin as opposed to paying off my mortgage. Rates are so low, like the spread there that you're capturing is just like unheard of, right? You're paying 5% probably on your mortgage max here in Canada, and Bitcoin's returning 60% compound annual growth rate. It's not in my opinion, this is not, I'm telling you what to do. In my opinion, I think that that's a terrible decision to pay off your mortgage and when you could buy Bitcoin with that proceeds.
Yeah, the one way that I like looking at this is if you take on a mortgage, basically you're bringing your future consumption to the present. So you're able to buy more than you'd normally be able to afford. If you pay off that mortgage, you're basically deleting that consumption. You're getting rid of that future consumption. You're paying it back. So I think the better option here, even the US government is in $37 trillion worth of debt. Why would you want to pay? And some people actually have their mortgages given to them. They have a mortgage rate that's lower than the US government is paying. So if you have like a 2% mortgage, I know mortgages in Canada at one point are like 1.5%, 1.8%. So if you have a 2% mortgage, why would you pay it back early? You might as well take advantage. If anything, you might as well take advantage of putting that money in a high yield savings account and get 4%.
The only reason why would be an emotional reason, and that's not necessarily
emotional.
the best reason to do financial decisions is to act on emotions. Like a lot of people are very afraid of debt, and rightfully so to some degree. But I think, again, what Rajat was saying there is like you can get the lowest interest rates possible on homes, right? It's basically subsidized, the interest rate for home ownership. And then you can arbitrage that. You can do a basis trade, understanding that Bitcoin is going to rapidly outperform the cost of that mortgage rate, that loan amount. But again, it's not for everybody. People, if you don't understand that, or if you can't handle having any sort of debt, then maybe it's not right for you. But just running the numbers, it definitely makes sense to not pay off your mortgage and to stack sats instead.
And based on what you just said there's also a situation where you may not want to do this. So let's say, for example, if you buy Bitcoin instead of paying off your mortgage, and then Bitcoin's price falls 70% and you have never gone through a drop before, then you sell your Bitcoin when it's down 70%. You'd be way worse off. Because not only can you no longer pay back your mortgage with the same amount, you don't even have the same number of US dollars, right? But eventually, if you have the patience, eventually Bitcoin will come back up, and you'll see that it goes back to whatever price you paid for it. Bitcoin's price eventually does run out. No matter what happens, it will eventually run out. You'll see that whatever you pay for it today is going to eventually be a rounding error. So buy that Bitcoin instead of paying back your mortgage early. Make your payments on time. I think that's the better way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And Hagendahl just said Bitcoin goes down 70%. I take out as much debt as I can. Not going to lie. I think a lot of us here would do that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have done that when I first got into Bitcoin because I didn't have the conviction that I have now.
Yeah.
I didn't have the understanding that I have now. So
Exactly.
I think that is where it's sort of, where you need to get to. You need to get to the conviction, understanding. A lot of it is just time of holding it, time of trusting it, seeing that it's still on your hardware wallet when you go back and check on it a month later, all these different things that you need to do as an early Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
A couple different zaps here just came through the airwaves here. We got 2,000 sats anonymously sent in. And we got 821 sats sent in anonymously as well, but I'm pretty sure that's from Frank. That's his number. And also, I missed these earlier on the Zap stream. We had Gronky Tonk Man zap 300 sats and said, late to the game, but wanted to say how awesome it was to see Rajat debate the XRP guy.
Oh, yeah. That was a great one.
So that was from Gronky Tonk, 300 sats. And Nick zapped 500 sats on Zap stream as well. So thank you, Nick. And Mix sent in 2.1 thousand sats over on the Zap stream. So thanks everybody over there. That is very generous of you. Much appreciated. And also we did a little shout out here for the channel. Keep in mind here, if you're watching this on Forrest's channel, on Rajat's channel, on anywhere else, make sure you head over to Maple Bitcoin. We did officially hit 4,000 subscribers here on the channel. So everybody here, the real MVPs of the chat of the day today. Do you guys have anything you want to close out on? Let's maybe start giving our final thoughts. Or did you see any questions that you want to address?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. I mean, there's lots that we've missed, but we can only do so much. Yeah. And I think that's another thing we plan to do with the school at some point is that we've talked about the school earlier is to have a more exclusive, smaller amount of people because you have to be part of the school to get into like maybe a monthly live stream. We still haven't figured out the logistics of it, but in that way we would be able to really answer your questions because there's just tons of stuff we've missed. There's tons of stuff. That's just inevitable.
Nate the Great said, no one answered my question. Sorry, buddy. We can't get through them all. We'd be here for 6 hours. So if you do have a question that you really want addressed, make sure you send a super chat or you send a zap to the channel. That's a good way to prioritize your. It's just reality. We there's no way we could address all these.
Yeah.
There's also I wanted to just say we can also have the questions posted in the community and we'll give those priority.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. The super chat is like a replaced by fee for Bitcoin mining transactions.
Wow.
Rajat, do you have that? Do you have the link to that XRP debate?
I just shared the community. Let me find the XRP debate.
Nice.
I like this one from Dripmeister. Macho Man Rajat Savage.
All right, I shared the link.
That is awesome. Paul said, "Put up your school link there." Okay, so this should be there a couple times. I'll say it again. Rajat, you've been on school for a little while now. I mean, aside from like the obvious best practices and stuff in terms of like helping people become better Bitcoiners, protect their Bitcoin better, manage their Bitcoin better, you want to just quickly speak on like the community aspect of it itself, like the live streams, people chatting in there, sharing resources and stuff?
Yeah, I think the important thing is just going through whenever Bitcoin's price increases, people want to buy. But the hard part is holding when the Bitcoin price falls. And I think that's what the community helps with. I think a lot of people join the community because they want that support while the price is coming down. Like my community's been, I've had my community up since maybe January of 2024, I think it was. And we've gone through multiple dips in that time. So we went from 72K down to 50K. Then we went from, the 110K or whatever to 75K. And I think that just having people to rely on who you can talk to, who you can mention that, okay, this is something that I'm scared about. This is something I'm worried about. Even I sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but even I sometimes feel a little bit nervous when Bitcoin's price starts falling. But then when that's my emotions, right? But when I think of it logically, it changes it. It changes how I think. Somebody said here, y'all are the epitome of moon boys not preparing your audience for the 80% drop. Just last week, we actually posted a video that said, prepare for Bitcoin's next crash. So
Yeah.
either you're not paying attention or you just want to say stuff like this that has no backing. But the group is great for people who want to keep their sanity. I
Yeah.
think talking to other people is the best part. We're going to be around, right? We're going to be around when Bitcoin's price falls 70, 80, 90%. Eventually it could happen. We're not saying that it can't happen. We've never, ever on this group said that Bitcoin's price can't fall. We know that if you buy Bitcoin, you're going to feel stupid for the next 4 years. We know it. And we try to prepare you for that, right? That's the point of these conversations. So in the group, I think we're just going to do more of that. We're just going to keep you sane. We're going to make sure that you guys don't get worried about where this thing is going. You're going to see a lot of posts about people talking about like random cryptocurrencies. Our goal is to get you to not waste your money on that garbage. Like last week, there was a guy who was talking in my community. I have a community of my own. There was a guy who was saying how he saw some posts from somebody talking about Bitcoin H, which is supposed to be a green version of Bitcoin. And then this week, somebody mentioned, why shouldn't I buy XRP? So we just went through all of that. And I think I probably convinced maybe 10 to 15 people from my community to switch from altcoins. So random altcoins, whichever coins there are, into Bitcoin. And they've benefited from it.
Yep.
Nice.
I would say the same about Living the Future community. Just the amount of support that people have in there. Everybody's kind of knowledge grows together. That's the nice thing is you're going to find a variety of people in there who are a little bit more advanced, a little bit more behind. And that's how people really learn. And I think the couple of areas within the school community that we want to focus on in terms of the content that we have in there is we're going to have a lot of exclusive content that's not on anybody's channels or the Maple Bitcoin channel. It's going to be specifically for the community within school. And kind of our two areas of focus, I would say, outside of like the Bitcoin education and really learning how to protect your Bitcoin is going to be saving money and making money. So it's not going to be all Bitcoin content. We all three of us run businesses. We've seen the good of that, the bad of that, the pros and the cons. And so we want to share our experience. We want to help people build. We want to give people ideas. We just want to see everybody grow, succeed, and protect their Bitcoin. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on within the school community there. So, and just one more time, I know we mentioned it, or I mentioned it before, but kind of our idea here is because we don't have a whole lot on there yet, we're going to have a very low introductory price on the school. And once we hit 50 members in there, we're actually going to double it. So it's going to go from 21 to 42. And it's just going to keep going up as we add more and more content in there. It becomes more valuable. The community is more valuable itself. And so that's a good way to guarantee. And you're going to lock yourself in at that price for forever, as long as the community exists at $21 per month. So we shared that in the chat a couple times there. I'll also put that in the show notes and the pinned comments afterwards, just in case people are watching this later on. So I'll make sure to have that in there if anybody wants to join from there. I see Abedi said, where can I get George's King hats? They're cool. I love them. Well, actually, it's King Golf. It's my little brother and my company. And we actually got a sale on ending today, 3 hats for $100 Canadian. So I'm pretty sure we're losing money off it, but you can find it on there. You got till the end of the day, and you can get 3 of these hats for $100 Canadian. So about $50 American, it seems like, anyways. So there it is. I just shared it in the chat there. Oh, we got one more last minute super chat here, boys. Sorry, don't mean to keep you. I have plans in place to hold my digital holdings in the LLC and then place the LLC in a trust. Is that overdoing it? Do you guys have thoughts on this?
I don't know. I'm not too aware of that. I think that'd be something that you'd want to talk to an accountant about.
And
right?
a lawyer.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, accountant and estate lawyer for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, placing in a trust, it depends on, a lot of that is going to depend on tax jurisdictions or whatever. I'm fading here, guys. It's going to depend on tax treatment for LLCs versus personal, for inheritance, trust, all that stuff. Without knowing a lot more additional information, it's very hard to like make a call on that. But potentially, it is a good idea. Potentially, it is more complicated than it would need to be. But that's basically all I have to say there.
That was good. Yeah, that's kind of what I would say too. And I don't know who Bitcoin Reply Girl is. I don't know if it's Forrest from his underneath his desk here, but he was talking while they were talking there. So some very nice words from Bitcoin Reply Girl, who said $21 a month is a laughable amount to pay these educated or to be educated by these three. And also said something.
That's my burner account.
No, I actually spoke to her one day. She's great.
No, she is great. Yeah.
I was just joking. But this is this is exactly what we're talking about here. Having someone walk you through Bitcoin psychology is worth thousands of dollars in losses you'd likely experience. Invaluable. If you're new to Bitcoin, you need a community. I 1000% agree to that. And it doesn't have to be the Maple Bitcoin community, but you should join some sort of community out there, because you're going to be able to share ideas. You're going to be able to build things together. You're going to be able to talk each other off the ledge when Bitcoin's crashing. There's so many aspects of being part of a Bitcoin community that are incredibly undervalued. And so again, we wanted to make sure that everybody who wants to be part of this could be for a very low price at $21 a month. But as it grows, it's going to go up and up and up. But Jason, we shared the link a couple times. Hopefully they're coming through there.
Yeah, I shared it on my end. You mind sharing it on your end, guys? Forrest, do you mind sharing it?
I got it. Yeah, I'll share it.
I'll share it one last time just so that people see it on my end as well.
Yeah, and again, one more time, I'll put this in the show notes after in the pinned comment of this video. So if you do want to join, I'm thinking, I don't know, based on those ka-chings we heard right off the hop, I'm guessing the 50 spots will fill up maybe in the next week or before the next stream. So don't.
We have 4 new members so far.
Nice.
What's that?
4 members.
Nice. Plus us, so 7.
7, yeah.
Okay, so everybody, have yourselves an amazing weekend. This is a long weekend for us. I got a country fest here, so I'm going to be having a couple beers this weekend, but I will be recovered hopefully by next Friday's stream. But yeah, check out the school community. We don't have a lot on there yet, but we do plan on adding a significant amount and putting it as our top priority, I think, for the next couple months here. So have yourselves an amazing weekend, fellas. Thanks everybody for being in the chat today. Thank you for all the support and the sats. And we'll see you right back here next Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, fellas.
See ya.